Publish Our Podcast, episode 95. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Publish Our Podcast. I'm Alexa Bigworth, the host, and this week is an interesting look at all things related to how you decide to publish your book. I'm talking with Carol Saller, who is a contributing writer for the Chicago Manual of Style. She's one of the contributing writers to the Chicago Manual of Style fiction shop talk, where they dig into all kinds of topics around things that writers need to know. But she's also published several books in different genres. She's an editor. She is got all kinds of experience in the industry. So we talk about what route to publishing is right for you, whether you should self-publish or go through traditional or hybrid. We talk about working with editors. We talk about all kinds of things, tips for submitting a manuscript to an agent. So there's all kinds of tidbits in this, as well as some great resources for you. And I think you're going to learn quite a bit from this episode. So enjoy the show. As always, if you are enjoying our show, I would really like it if you would leave us a review, if you would share the podcast, if you would subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and all of those fun things. So we appreciate you, and be sure to check out all of our upcoming events at womenInPublishingSummit.com. We have a full schedule of webinars and workshops and trainings each month. So, all right, for real this time, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Publish Her Podcast, a place where you can come to get inspiration, motivation, help, encouragement, and support in your journey to write, publish, and sell your book. Hosted by Alexa Bigworth. 'Cause I've been where you've been, and I felt what you're feeling, and I don't want to get in your way. Welcome back to another episode of the Publish Her Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about which route you should pursue in publishing, self-publishing, hybrid, traditional, and getting into if you are going to go the traditional route or even a hybrid in some cases, how to submit your manuscript and some of the common mistakes that authors make when submitting their manuscript. So my guest today is Carol Saller. Her books include The Subversive Copy Editor and several books for children. She is a professional writer and a copy editor who for many years has worked on the team of the Chicago Manual of Style. Her young adult historical novel, Eddie's War, was named a Best Book of the Year by Bank Street and Kirkus Reviews, and a Best of the Best Fiction for Teens by the Chicago Public Library. Her picture book, The Bridge Dancers, received the Carl Sandburg Award for Children's Literature. George Washington Carver was an NCSS/CBC notable, and Pug, Slug, and Doug the Thug was the main feature on the PBS Storytime television. Now in its second edition, The Subversive Copy Editor was Publishers Weekly. I am having a hard time today. Publishers Weekly Online starred pick of the week. So basically, you've got a lot of writing and editing experience, and with really good books of your own. So thank you so much for being with us today, Carol.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So your books, are you self-published, traditionally published, which a little bit of both? What was your route?
Well, all of my books are traditionally published, but I'm making a transition now into self-publishing, and it's kind of scary and kind of exciting. Because I've worked in publishing my whole adult life, I know quite a lot about it. But even so, I'm finding that it's that I hit roadblocks constantly and have to learn something, and things change constantly. So my heart goes out to someone wanting to do either traditionally or self-publish who doesn't know anything about the process.
Yeah. It's a big process. So what made you decide to switch? And I hear this a lot. I hear of authors who start traditionally and then self-publish. What made you decide to go that route?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly open to both, but basically I have not been able to get an agent in order to sell the books that I've been writing lately, even though I'm a published writer with contacts in publishing. I'm telling you, it's the Wild West out there. And I've tried for 3 or 4 years now without
Wow.
luck to get an agent. And without an agent, you really can't traditionally publish children's books. So it's not ideal to self-publish middle grade novels, which is what I'm writing. It means I have to change my goals and expectations. But on the other hand, I'm very excited about it because it allows me to move ahead, even in a more modest way. And I'm happy to talk about all the different factors that not my own personal journey, which isn't that maybe applicable to everyone's, but more generally how people would decide which way to go.
Well, let's do that. Let's just dig right into that. How does one make that decision?
Okay. Well, some people will start from the same point as me. They'll try for a while to get an agent and they'll get discouraged. So they're definitely a good candidate for self-publishing. But I would say that there are, I like to break it down into 5 kinds of writers who are good candidates for self-publishing. And a couple of these, probably most of your audience, it doesn't apply to them. So, because the first main category is if you're a celebrity or a social media star, who already has all your followers who will buy everything you write, like why give a publisher all your royalties? You
That's
should just
really interesting that you would put that as the category of self-publishing, because most people say those are the most likely candidates to be picked up for traditional.
they can do whatever they want.
That is so true.
Yeah, but they can you'll find a lot of them are switching now to self-publishing because they get a 70% royalty on a
Right.
self-published book and they only get like 15, 20%
That's
and probably have to pay an agent, 20% as well.
Well, we could
So
probably put that into the category of business owners too, because if you already have your own existing audience, and maybe that's part of your 5, I'll be quiet and let you continue on.
no, you're absolutely right. That's number 2. Someone who's an expert, a doctor who writes a diet book or a dog trainer who writes how to raise a puppy. They've got their clients, they've got their social media going. They might have YouTubes already out or something. So if you're an expert and you have those credentials and you have a platform, then just as you suggested, traditional publishing might be a good option for you also, but you have your choice.
Yeah.
And you might go for the self route to save time and money and get a better have more control over your work and get more of the royalty from it. So the third one that maybe people in your audience can relate to more is writers of genre fiction, fantasy and romance, and books that are often written in series and who develop a following. Those are and that are sold as ebooks. Mainly sold as ebooks. So, like if you have 6 romance novels or 6 fantasies, you publish them all, maybe even all at once. If you've been sitting on a backlog and not able to get them published, you give away the first one for free because you can do that with an ebook or for 99 cents. Right. And then you suck in that person to become a fan. And the next one costs $1.99 and on up, so that your profits come from the sell-through of a series, not you take a loss on the first book. So that's a very popular model right now. And of course, the trick is you have to write a good book, because to get the following, you want people who enjoy that first book and want to keep reading, either keep reading about those characters, or sometimes a series is not necessarily the same characters in one long epic. It's a series by the same author in the same style and genre. So and then a fourth category that I think a lot of people can relate to is someone who isn't really worried about selling their book or making money. They just want to have a printed book. Maybe it's a memoir or a family history or something that they want printed on their shelf, copies maybe to give to their family and friends. And to do that in any traditional way, to pay for a printer is very expensive, but to self-publish it, you can do that at a more for a more modest cost. And so that's a wonderful option for someone who thinks that they just want, it's like a private printing. Okay. And then I would put myself in the last category, and that is writers who are in a hurry, because
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not getting any younger.
Right.
And when I think about when I spend 3 years looking for an agent, and then I think, okay, what if I got an agent tomorrow? She asks me, if she's an editing agent, she asks me to rewrite to suit her vision of what will sell.
Right.
So I take some months to do that. Then she starts shopping it around. And the first editor says, oh, we might buy it, but could you just rewrite it like this?
Right.
And then they don't buy it. It might take 2 or 3 years even to get a contract, if you ever get one.
Right.
And then it's going to be 2 to 5 years in the publisher's pipeline, because there's a backlog right now. So I'm looking at, I could be dead basically before my book comes out. Okay. And if I self-publish, I mean, I could slam those puppies into print tomorrow if I wanted. I'm not. I'm going to be very careful, learn everything slowly and step by step, partly because I blog help for creative writers, and I'm going to be sharing what I learn as I move through those steps. So that has me excited. I think a lot of people are in the same boat, where they just don't want to enter that kind of nightmare of, I mean, some people might see it as comforting to be in the hands of an agent who's going to tell you, you'll do better if you make these changes. And then professional copy editors who tell you, the publisher pays for all of that. So those are wonderful benefits of being cared for, but there's still a lot of responsibility on the part of the writer to do that rewriting. And then once the book is out, whether you self-publish or traditional, the burden is going to be on you to do the marketing for
Yes.
that book. And of course, a traditional publisher will give you a nice boost at the beginning on their nickel. So it's another benefit. You'll be in their catalogs. Their sales reps will take your book to bookstores and other, you'll get reviewed by the respectable journals, and that sort of thing is a great benefit. But it kind of depends on what you're writing, whether you really need those benefits or not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I can corroborate this because I have a friend, Casey Whitener, who as an agent picked up her vampire book months ago, and then they are rewriting the entire book. And then, I mean, the process just for rewrites is probably going to be about 18 months, and then the whole shopping and all of the things. So yeah, it'll probably be 3, 4, 5 years before that book is published. Whereas I actually published one of her books through one of my presses, and we were able to publish it in like 4 months. I mean, we rush publish that. Generally, I take much longer than that, but it's a significant difference. If time is your factor, then, obviously self-publishing or hybrid publishing is going to be a much quicker route for you to get there.
Right. There's another thing that traditional publishers do that's a big relief. They handle all the tech.
Yes, yes,
If you're very uncomfortable or grumpy about learning about publishing technology, then, and social media and that sort of thing, then you're probably going to want to look for traditional publishing. And or, some people just want the cachet of having a big five name on their book. If it's a status or ego thing, it's legitimate in some circles. It's what kept me from turning to self-publishing, because when you work in publishing, self-publishing, and you're of my generation, I don't think this is true anymore. I mean, self-publishing has just become so respectable,
Yeah.
but it hasn't always been.
Yes.
And so I had to really do some emotional work to say, you know what, this is the future for me. And I'm not going to be defensive or ashamed of it. I'm going to go for it wholeheartedly as a very viable option. So those are things people have to work through. And then there's one more thing that might be a problem for a self-publisher, and that's if you write, quiet literary fiction, a standalone novel, you can publish it yourself, but it's not going to be easy for anyone to discover that you put it up there on the internet.
Yeah.
Because when they don't know the title, they don't know your name, they Google World War II romance or whatever, and 99,000 books are going to come up on Google before
Yeah.
yours.
No, yeah, that's
So
a very good point. And I think a lot of people do still believe that just getting their book on Amazon is enough and sharing it with their inner circle and things like that. And it's just not.
no,
They have those first initial sales, but
right. But it might be enough for you,
yes,
and
exactly. Exactly. Depending on your goals and what you're trying to get out of it. If all you wanted was to publish a book, then that's all you got to do.
right. Um, but then the other thing is the idea of making the best product that you can, writing the best book that you can. If you do have more ambitions for
Mhm.
your book,
Mhm.
then all this preparation is going to be essential to have the book be indistinguishable from a traditionally published book. You don't want it to look like something a kid wrote
Right.
and smacked online. It's got to be professionally copy edited, and the cover design has to be appropriate to your genre, and that probably means getting some professional help with
Yeah.
the cover design and all of the stuff like when you put it online, learning something about how to list the keywords that
Mhm.
describe your book and get it into the metadata. You're
Mhm.
going to have to learn some stuff like that to optimize the searchability
Yeah.
of the book. Um, and so my expertise is not in those technical areas, although I have done all that before. I don't do it all the time. So every time I get ready to do it, it's like reinventing the wheel. I have to go back in and figure it all out again. But my expertise comes more with preparing your manuscript to be read by an agent or an editor, or to be ready to put into print as a self-published work. And there are two main areas for that. One is the actual writing, the grammar, the structure. And I'm not talking about character development or plot or anything like that. I'm talking about the craft, the work,
Yeah.
the spelling, the punctuation, and then second, the formatting, the margins, the line spacing, the font, all of this kind of nitty gritty. Like I'm more like the carpenter than the fine artist painter.
Right.
And but those things are really important because if your work is not prepared properly, then when you upload it into one of those publishing platforms, it's going to go haywire, and it's not going to turn up nicely in an ebook. There are a lot of things that have to happen under the hood to make it a smooth public publishing experience.
Sure.
Um, or cosmetically to make it an enjoyable experience for an agent or an editor
Right.
who's looking at it.
Right. And there are so many people who offer professional formatting at really reasonable prices. We worked with a company called Formatted Books, and they offer great ones. There's one Mibel Art, MIBL Art. They do formatting and cover design. There's a lot of companies that can really help you save so much time and energy and provide such a beautiful end result for you at really reasonable prices. So go ahead.
A lot of copy editors also build quite a lot of formatting
Mhm.
into their services, or they could be add-on services. They won't do coding, but they'll do styling,
Mhm.
which is the next best thing, because doing the styling allows the manuscript to be converted easily
Right.
into the coded product. So yeah, anyone hiring a copy editor should ask, will you format this so that it's ready for me to whatever you're going to do next? And they'll negotiate that with you.
But don't not hire them if they don't do formatting, because I've
Oh
worked
no,
with editors that don't format. So that would not
right.
be an expectation to have a copy
No, it's the same with any copy editor you hire. You really have to ask them a lot of questions. And if you're lucky, if they're professional, they'll ask you the questions.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say, do you want me to fact check? Because that's not normally a part of copy editing either. That's an extra service. And so most professional copy editors will have at least a web page that describes their services and maybe gives you some options, and then they're willing also to talk to you either on the phone or by email to find out what exactly you want and maybe do a sample edit, which you would pay for, so that both of you can see whether you feel like you want them to go ahead and do the whole thing, and they can get a sense of how much work your manuscript is going to need and give you an estimate for the whole thing.
Sounds good. Well, speaking of let's get into the next big question, which was, if you have decided that you still want to pursue the goal of an agent and the traditional publishing route, and you are preparing a manuscript, let's talk about how that manuscript should be prepared and what mistakes authors make in that process.
Okay. Well, the biggest mistake is to fail to go to the website of the person you're submitting to and find out what they want, because almost all agents and editors or publishers will post on their website exactly not exactly how to prepare the manuscript, but they'll give some rough guidelines. So to not follow those guidelines is just, it shows an immediate lack of respect and professionalism. And that means every time you send it to someone, you have to research that person's preferences. I'm always surprised when I see on Facebook, oh, I just sent my manuscript to 100 agents. And I think, did they really research each agent, not just what kinds of books they want, because that of course is the first thing you would do. I'm just talking about, they also usually say they want Microsoft Word, or they want a PDF, or they want, they'll tell you, and they'll say they don't want an attachment. They'll say you have to, a lot of times now you upload your manuscript or paste it into a form online. And of course, then you kind of lose control of a lot of formatting, but they know that.
Right.
So they allow for that. And they'll say how many chapters they want or how many pages. And so all of that is the first mistake is just to barge ahead without carefully looking into who you're sending it to. Go to their social media, find out if they're funny or if they're serious, find out exactly what they'll put on manuscript wish list what kinds of things they want to read. So you can also research whether they're a likely person for your manuscript. But I would say not researching the recipient is the first big mistake. And if they don't have any guidelines, then that's, yay. That means that you can just use your standard, the one that you've prepared to publishing standards, which I'll talk about in a minute, because there are definitely some conventions that make a standard manuscript. And if you follow those basic rules, then most agents and editors aren't going to be shocked or appalled if if they have a preference that you fail to follow. But at any rate, if no lines are available, then the standard format would be double spaced. Don't ask me why, because I know why. It's because it's a holdover from the olden days, but it's still the convention. So why not follow it? We all know that if you sent in a single spaced submission, all an editor has to do is make like 3 clicks and it'll be double spaced. But why make them do that if they ask you to prepare it? I mean, some of a lot of editors are older. They aren't interested in changing their ways. For decades, they have evaluated manuscripts based on, say, how many pages it is. And the number of pages something is very different if you single space it.
Sure.
And or if you use some weird font that can throw off pagination. They're just do what they say. Double space it, put a page number on every page, which again, you think, why? It's an electronic document, like who cares about the page numbers? But you'd be surprised how many editors print off pages for one reason or another, that they just want to make marks on. A lot of writers still, edit their own work on by
Uh-huh.
printing, and that's another reason for the double spacing. Originally, all manuscripts were edited on paper, and they needed space between the lines to make their notes and
Right.
changes. So and then you print off some pages, and you get the pages out of order. You just want to, slit your wrists. So page number on every page is just really important. Another thing that a lot of writers do that make a manuscript almost unreadable is that they justify both margins. They make that, the left margin is always straight, but
Right.
if you make the right margin straight, it stretches those lines so
Right.
that there's big spaces in between some words, and then it mashes some other lines together. So just always use, never justify that right-hand margin. That's going to look terrible. And then just pick a boring standard font. Times New Roman 12 point is like the gold standard. So we could argue all day on whether, it's the future or not. But for now, I would say about almost every single website I've ever checked for an agent or an editor has said to use that, or they might give one alternative, non, sans serif
Right.
font.
Right.
And they might allow for, no, it's always a good bet.
Yeah.
Times New Roman 12 point. Yeah.
Good to know.
So those are the big mistakes I can think of. And then of course, that's on the formatting side, but on the preparation side, the big mistakes are to not have your work read by others in order to make it very as readable as you possibly can, and grammatical insofar as your work requires, whatever the grammar of your work is. Like maybe you have characters who speak ungrammatically,
Right.
but that still requires a copy editor's eye, because you want to be consistent,
Right.
and you want to be realistic. So I'm not saying that your work should all be formal standard English, by no means, but almost always in books where the characters might speak in a dialect or a slang, the narration is usually in standard formal English, unless it's first person.
Yeah.
So you need to, a copy editor will keep a close eye on the consistency of the tone and stuff like that. And when you go astray, they'll get you back on the right track.
Yeah, to that point, I was at the South Carolina Writers Association conference recently and I met with an agent and I told her, I said, I don't have a book written, but I just wanted to pitch an idea to even see if it would be something you'd be interested at some point. So I pitched her my idea and she said this, she said, that sounds like a great idea. There's a market for it. I would enjoy that, but don't send it to me until it is completely written, workshopped, you know, edited, perfected. She was like, I don't want to see anything that's not, ready to go, basically. So yeah, they really do want a book that is polished. That doesn't mean it won't get edited again, but that just means that they want polished work.
Yeah, and if you're lucky, it will get edited again. I mean,
Yeah.
the more eyes, the better.
Agreed. Agreed.
I should say right here that I actually wrote a blog post for the Chicago Manual of Style, which I can explain in a second if you want. Just recently, that that should help writers figure out whether they need a copy editor before they submit or not. Because I actually don't think everybody needs one. It's a big expense.
Right.
And if you're submitting to traditional publishers, if your work is in good enough shape and they're going to copy edit it, you know, why spend that money? So the blog post is called "Does Your Novel Need a Copy Editor Before Submission?" And it's at Shop Talk, CMOS, CMOS, Chicago Manual of Style, CMOS, Shop Talk. The Chicago Manual of Style, which I've worked on the team of for my whole professional life, is published. Maybe a lot of you have heard of it. I'm going to hold it up. It's 1,100
That's
pages
a big book.
of advice for writers.
Wow.
And you know, it's since 1906. It's used around the world. It's the style manual that's used by most trade book publishers.
Okay.
So it's something every writer should know exists, because this is what their copy editor is going to use
Right.
when they copy edit your book. And one of the problems with this for creative writers is that CMOS, we'll just call it, or Chicago Manual, was written for academic scholars,
Interesting.
who are publishing in journals and publishing their monographs. So it's only recently that that although fiction writers and editors have been crying for years, please, please make this more relevant to us, because so much of it doesn't apply to creative writing.
Right.
I mean, there are like 200 pages on just how to write footnotes and
Oh
bibliography.
my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. So what Chicago Manual has done in the last 4 years, they started a section at their blog called Fiction Plus, and there are now about 50 different blog posts that just address style and grammar issues that plague writers,
Oh, that's good.
creative writers. And when I say creative writers, I don't mean just fiction, just novelists, but
Right.
also creative nonfiction
Right.
writers, you know. So that's the Fiction Plus. Is I'm one of the writers at Fiction Plus, and the other one is Russell Harper, who actually has written the last two manuals. He and I alternate. Well, actually, he's been really busy with other things lately, so I guess I've written most of them lately. But it's a whole trove of good advice for writers. Instead of trying to buy this book and read it, you can cherry pick the topics like how do I write a text? My characters are texting each other.
Oh yeah.
How should I format that in my novel? Or I don't want to use quotation marks for my dialogue, you know. So you can
Not a
find
thing.
all, oh yeah, there are lots and lots of novels that don't use quotation marks for dialogue.
Wow.
It's very common. So it's the kind of thing. Or how do I write numbers? Do I spell out these numbers in my novel? Or can I put an iPhone in my novel? Things on fair use and copyright and
Right.
trademarks and stuff like that.
Interesting.
So that's the kind of thing that writers, you don't want to spend your time thinking about it,
Right.
you know. So either you have to learn about it yourself, or you depend on a copy editor to flag those things and sort them out for you.
That's really interesting. Well, this has been a phenomenal interview. I appreciate you sharing all of that. I'll make sure that that link to the Chicago Manual Fiction section is in the show notes as well as your website. But where's the best place for people to contact you?
I would go to carolsaller.com, but with the caveat that oh, this is such a nightmare. TypePad, my web hoster, crashed last week. It
No.
was down for a week. I mean, it's up again, but not all the images are loading. I'm terrified. I'm just terrified. I have 10 years and I have like 4 websites and a blog on TypePad, and it's very scary, but still, you can contact me. It works. There's a contact menu item at carolsaller.com, and that will lead you to all of my other blogs and whatever else you want to know about me.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having you on the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You don't have to give me your heart. You don't have to give it away. You don't got
Thank you for joining us on the Publisher Podcast. We hope to see you back for the next episode. Great, huge thanks goes to Jasmine Commerce for the use of her song. You can find Jasmine on SoundCloud. Go check out all of her music. We'll see you next time.